Hey, welcome aboard. I want to thank you. This is the first official video I've made. I did one to announce the goal, but this is the first official video I'm doing, and I'm gonna release it ahead of some of the older ones. But we met our goal on 9/14 of 25 subscribers. I honestly didn't think we'd be getting there, and I really do want to thank everybody for that. The new goal, and I am not going to redo it. New goal, goal met. I should have taken that out. New goal. Uh, any video that I post, and it can even be one of the older ones, if I get 15 comments with hashtag Dark Brandon Rises, then I'll consider that a goal met. I'll make a new video or new splash screen like this and set a new goal. I really appreciated the subscribers, and I really don't want to call for any. I mean, feel free. You want to help out, subscribe, like, share. But I just wanted to do a fun one because meeting that goal. Oh, excuse me, voice is getting a little funny. Meeting that goal really meant a lot to me. I really appreciate it. Now, the topic that we're going to talk about this is, and this was not even one of my little news clips. I got a section I do called "What I Found on the Web," and it's just in it. I don't do them every day. When I see something that stands out, I kind of make an issue of it. And I saw somebody's tweet, and it kind of caught my eye. And they were basically just saying, "Hey, can we can we try to trend heroes and not losers?" And it was a police officer who I believe died in the line of duty, and they thought maybe these are the people that should be trending on Twitter, not losers like Kyle Rittenhouse. And that's all it was. It was just a shout out. It was not one of these videos that are doing. And somebody really went off. And this is the thing, I'm not gonna, because I'm pretty sure he commented on it. It's going in the news one. I might put it in there just for that other guy, but I told him, because I wasn't going to just argue with an idiot in the comments. And I want to be completely upfront on this. He was respectful. All the comments I've got, the people have been decent respect. I haven't gotten anything that really offended me or anything like that. Some of these people, I mean, they all seem like nice people. I think a lot of them are delusional. I mean, but they all seemed like really nice people. I mean, they really did. They were, couple of them maybe were not that educated. I'm not a rocket science either, but some of them didn't seem like they were overly educated. Some of them did. I don't know if they're being dishonest, if they're, purposely blind to the truth, or if they just, if there's something wrong. I mean, I don't know. And if you ever followed Richard Dawkins, he made a comment on that, and this would be for your religious nuts, but he was talking about these people that think the Earth is only like 6,000 years old or whatever because of the Bible, and he talked about how old the Earth actually is, and there's evidence for this. And I think, and he basically said that for you to think that it's only 6,000, he goes, this is a pretty sizable gap from the truth. And he was just talking about how he didn't really understand how a brain could dysfunction that much, and that's where I'm at. I uh i i used to argue with these people, and I was a lot more of a dick because I honestly believed people could not be this fucking stupid. I mean, I sincerely was. I did not believe people could be this stupid. And then I actually met some of them and worked with a lot of them when I moved down and had to work in Indiana. And then I'm like, wow, you know yeah, because I always thought people were just faking it. I really did. But what we're going to talk about here is the Kyle Rittenhouse issue. And this guy, and I got a feeling he's along the same people uh, who, during the Obama administration, no matter how much proof you showed them, they just couldn't seem to get their head wrapped around that Hawaii was part of the U.S. and not part of Kenya. And I think this is the thing. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time. If I've got somebody that's just unwilling to learn or is too stupid to learn, if whether they're whatever the reason is, I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to convince them. I am completely fine with them being stupid. I really am. I'm just absolutely okay with it. But let's move on and get this thing going.
So let's talk about this new ruling by the Wisconsin judge presiding over the Kyle Rittenhouse murder case. The judge ruled that the prosecutors cannot refer to the two people Rittenhouse killed and the one he shot who survived, cannot refer to those people as victims. But the judge also ruled that Rittenhouse's defense attorneys can refer to those human beings as rioters, looters, and arsonists. Let's talk about that. Because treating everyone in a case fairly, victims and defendant alike, like justice, matters.
Okay, and that kind of sets it up. This is Glenn Kirshner. He has a podcast, Justice Matters. He has, I think, it's either 25 or 30 years as a federal prosecutor. He did a number of years as a JAG in the Army, that's federal, and he also worked for the Department of Justice. And that there, right there, sets it up. That is one of the big things. And some of this stuff I'm not going to be able to find, and you can either believe it or not. I live in Wisconsin, so this was on a lot of local news. And here's the thing: I got health issues. I may not be remembering it right. I'm just being completely honest. But I watched a lot of this on local news. Well, they don't always put stuff up on YouTube, and I'm doing my level best to find some of this stuff. And I've got some of it in print, and I'll just read it. This is going to be a long video, but I really ask you to stick around for it because there's a lot of people out that are lying, and if we can get the truth out there, it might prevent somebody from doing this again. Like you had these guys, they were domestic terrorists. They overtook a federal wildlife preserve when Obama was president. And when people started referring to them publicly as terrorists, they didn't like it. And maybe we can actually stop some of these people. Maybe we can stop the next Kyle Rittenhouse from shooting somebody if we tell the truth on Kyle Rittenhouse now, if we don't listen to the people out there who don't know what they're talking about, are purposely misleading people on this. And I think that really matters. So he set that up. That's one thing that is an issue. I'm going to try and find some more of these videos because I'd rather let them talk than have to read it. But the judge made a decision where the defense lawyer could refer to people as rioters, looters, and his victims, the people he shot, as basically criminals. And I don't think any of them had been convicted, but yet they couldn't refer to the people he shot as victims. That right there, and he's talking about it, sets an unfair basis for the trial. You're giving a hand up to the defense, and you are basically stomping on the prosecutor's foot. And it's not right. It's just not right. I'm going to go ahead and watch this because it's been a while. It's been about 10 months. And I'm going to see if there's anything that I can add in here from his video. Hang on one sec.
Refer to the people who were killed and injured. You can use those terms in front of the jury over and over again. I guess, in the judge's mind, maybe those people needed a good killing, and that's the message we're supposed to send to the jury by saying they're not victims, but they're arsonists and looters and rioters. That is not equal justice. That is a horrifically biased ruling, in my opinion, in my experience, that makes it look like the judge is trying to stack the deck in Rittenhouse's favor. That's the way it looks.
Okay, now right here, he's gonna talk about it a little bit more, but then he's gonna actually cite a Wisconsin law, a law that judge should have to be following and clearly did not follow. Hang on one sec.
But a judge who says you can't call them victims, but you can use all these dehumanizing, derogatory terms to refer to them, that's obscene. That is no kind of equal justice. And I know we're living in a post-irony world these days, it seems, But it probably also qualifies as irony. You know why? Because the Wisconsin law has a crime victims' bill of rights. It's section 950.04, and it lists a series of rights that crime victims have. You know what number one is on the crime victims' bill of rights in Wisconsin? The right of victims to be treated fairly and with dignity and with respect by public officials, employees, and agencies. And Judge Schroeder just did the exact opposite. He arguably violated the first right of crime victims. Let's hope that he conducts the trial more fairly than he resolved the pretrial issues and rulings.
Okay, this is another video of his, and I just want to, you can go and watch the video, but I just want to say he started out saying that we have to accept the jury non-guilty finding. And he said that, and he talked about how many times when he lost a case as prosecutor, he had to go out courthouse steps and say that, you know, the government accepts the jury verdict. Well, I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not a lawyer. And here's the thing, and I don't know, but to me, it almost seems like in this case, they should have went to an appeals court, and I think he's going to talk about that when I play the tape again. This is something where you should be able to go to an appeals court and either get a new trial or get the appeals court to overturn the trial based on the judicial, misconduct. This is not the OJ trial where, people are talking, and this is the thing, the same people, like the guy that probably defended this guy, I bet you they're the same ones that talk about how horrible the OJ decision was. And I think it's horrible that OJ got away with murdering his wife. But see, in that case, it really looked like one of the reasons why he was found not guilty was because they found that the police were mishandling the evidence. You know, these police, if you watch those movies and read those books about the old legal system in LA, Black Dahlia and some of that, where you had these cops that were basically just outside the law, doing things they shouldn't. And they did it for a while and it finally got out of hand. These cops were basically trying to put their finger on the scale and make sure OJ got convicted. And that's this is a case where the judge is actually in there, and it really appears like he is doing everything he can to get this guy off. It was kind of like that one case a number of years ago where a boy got caught raping a girl, and the judge was from his same school, college or prep school or whatever. And I can't remember if it was the judge or the dad, but the guy was guilty. He was found guilty of rape, and that's hard to do. But he was found guilty of rape, and the judge pretty much let him off with a slap on the wrist. And I think it was his dad who made a comment, well, you can't ruin his life just for 15 minutes of fun. And one, I think his dad overestimated how long his son probably lasted. But the fact is, you've got this stuff. This is no different than the cops. I mean, you've got cops that shoot black people who are innocent, haven't done anything wrong, And then you've got, there was one guy, I can't remember if he ate somebody, but he was a hardened criminal, and the cops took him to fucking Burger King, after they arrested him before they took him to jail. Some of the terrorists that attacked the Capitol, instead of being locked up, instead of being under house arrest, one of them got to go to Mexico. We clearly have two completely different judicial systems depending on whether you're poor. And you're going to say, a lot of people are going to say black and white, and there's some truth to that, but a lot of it's got to do with you're poor. If you're poor versus if you're rich. And I don't know, I'm going to let the tape go. I just want to let him go. But yeah, there's just clearly something going on here with this judge.
What I mean by that, I want to talk about a couple of the things about this trial that really bothered me. In particular, the judge. The judge set the tone early on by saying to the prosecutors, you may not call the gunshot victims, the people who were shot, two of whom were killed by Kyle Rittenhouse, you may not call them victims because that's a loaded term. And then he turned to the defense attorneys and said, but you may call them rioters and looters and arsonists. You may use those conclusory, derogatory slurs to refer to the human beings who were shot and killed. But government, prosecutor, you may not use the loaded term victim, even though they were clearly gunshot wound victims. That set the tone early on, and it treated the parties unfairly. It gave Kyle Rittenhouse's defense team an advantage. That's just one of the many things that concerned me deeply about the way this Judge Schroeder, handled the trial. But rather than go on for a couple of hours critiquing so much of what Judge Schroeder did, let me talk about another aspect of the trial. It is perhaps an understatement to say that different people viewed this case, viewed the evidence through very different lenses. Here's what I wrote about that. Some people hail Rittenhouse as a vigilante hero of sorts, a free agent crime fighter determined to protect property and promote order in a city taken over by lawless rioters, while others viewed Rittenhouse as a young racist with an itchy trigger finger who opened fire without cause on people who were protesting police abuse. This latter view paints the shooting victims as heroes who were chasing down and trying to disarm an active shooter after Rittenhouse fired his assault-style rifle at the first victim.
And I want to stop right there, and I'm going to preview what's coming up. But that right there, and the guy that was commenting today, I am pretty sure he is with the first group, where they just, they're in that ammo-sexual collection of people that love guns, and I don't know, but they view him as some kind of a hero. And in reality, what it was, this is a guy that left his state, went to another state, probably because he thought after he shot these people, they wouldn't be able to come and get him or find him or whatever. And, but he went to that other state, strapped on a gun, went somewhere where he had no right to use that gun. I mean, he wasn't protecting his property. Even stand your ground laws, which I think have some issues, they didn't apply here. He wasn't even in his home state. And he went out there, and after he shot the first guy, the crowd understandably wanted to put him down. They wanted to take away his gun. They wanted to hold him for the police. And he shot them. That right there, that's the fact. The reality of now the defense lawyers can spin whatever they want, but I'm sorry, if you don't understand that, then you've got a problem with the reality, and it doesn't have anything to do with me. But that is effectively what happened. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let him speak a little bit more. But that right there was one of the biggest things that I think you could make. There's some other good things you could talk about.
So yes, different people, different factions viewed this case through very different lenses. But in my opinion, at the bottom of it all, here's why Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted by the jury. It's because of the law of self-defense. The law of self-defense says that once there's any evidence introduced at trial that the defendant might have acted in self-defense, then it is the prosecution's burden to disprove self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. And when I saw Kyle Rittenhouse testify that he believed he was at risk of death or serious bodily injury when he was being pursued, attacked, assaulted by the protesters, by the victims, and he believed he needed to use force, including deadly force, to repel the attack, I knew it was going to be very difficult for the prosecution to carry its burden of disproving self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. Because here's how that works. Ordinarily, defense attorneys will argue to a jury, ladies and gentlemen, you might think my client is probably guilty. That means you must vote not guilty, because probably doesn't cut it. Probably is not a conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt.
I left that in there because I want to be fair on this. I want to show everything, and he is explaining. And I got to be honest with you. I don't necessarily think that is a bad thing. And but that's a fair thing. But I seriously think if the judge would not have gotten involved, I'm not sure. But again, this is something that can come up, and I think it should stay in there. I think he's going to make some, and I'm not going to go into that, but I don't have a problem with that. Where, hey, if you get self-defense entered, I don't have a problem with the prosecution having to get over that burden. I don't, but I think when you have a judge doing just like what he brought up, where he's letting the defense call these people criminals and scumbags and all that, but yet you can't refer to his actual victims as victims. That set the stage, and that made it probably impossible for the prosecution. And here's the thing, I would feel a lot better about this if the judge had acted properly and they'd have still found him like, hey, that happens. But when you've got the misconduct by the judge, and I'm going to see if I can get some more info on that. Okay, here is the guy that Rittenhouse shot that he didn't murder. This is the guy that survived. The other two people died. And just let me get this queued up. And then I think it's going to go into another federal prosecutor. I am going to watch it, make sure he isn't just repeating what Glenn said. Hold on one sec.
Something that I was trying to do in that moment. I was trying to preserve my own life. But doing so while also taking the life of another is not something that I'm capable or comfortable in doing.
Grosskreutz was ultimately shot, describing to the court that Rittenhouse vaporized his arm, his word, tearing away much of the bicep. Jurors looked away as the state showed the moment Rittenhouse shot Grosskreutz. At one point, according to pool notes, a juror nodded in agreement as the judge instructed the jury to disregard Grosskreuz's description of the shooting of a protester as, quote, murder. Joining me now is Paul Butler, former federal prosecutor and Georgetown law professor. Paul, great to see you. Would love to get your reaction to Grosskreuz's testimony, because I always thought that, folks like the good guy with a gun, but also this judge and his actions in this case.
Jonathan, the prosecution has a tough case proving attempted murder because Mr. Grosskreutz himself was armed. He testified that he was afraid that Mr. Rittenhouse was going to kill him. On cross-examination, the defense got this witness to admit that it wasn't until he was pointing his gun at Rittenhouse that Rittenhouse fired. So that could bolster Rittenhouse's claim that he shot in self-defense because he believed that he faced a deadly threat.
Wait, but Paul, we just heard Grosskreuz's testimony where he said he thought it was an active shooter. So does that not, at a minimum, cancel out that little thing that the defense got him to say on the stand?
Well, in fact, he was right. Kyle Rittenhouse was an active shooter, and he'd already killed 2 people. What citizens are supposed to do in that situation is to call the police to alert authorities. This witness testified he put his hands in the air, but when he saw Mr. Rittenhouse re-rack his rifle, he was afraid for his life. The videotape is the star witness in this case, so the jurors will look at the videotape, they'll hear this testimony, and then they'll decide whether they believe this witness or whether they believe Mr. Rittenhouse.
Now, in my intro to you, I said that the judge instructed the jury to disregard Grosskretz's description of the shooting of a protester as, quote, murder. Is that because murder is actually there's a legal definition of murder?
That's exactly right. So it's the jury who will decide whether Mr. Rittenhouse is a murderer based on the fact that he killed the first two victims in this case. This judge likes the limelight, and he's micromanaging this case. This is the same judge who did not allow the victims in this case to be described as victims, even though Mr. Rittenhouse killed two of them. And the witness who testified today had graphic testimony about how Mr. Rittenhouse blew the bicep off of this man's arm when he shot him.
Let's talk more about this judge, because I'm following loosely this trial, but everything I hear about this judge just sort of has planted the seed in my head that this trial is, sorry to use the word, rigged. That the instructions of the judge is making it pretty much impossible for the jury to actually consider all the facts and come up with a verdict where justice will be served. Or am I way out there in what I just said?
Not at all, Jonathan. I understand your concerns. Remember, this judge also ruled that the victims could be referred to as looters, arsonists, and rioters if there's evidence that is presented that they did those things. So far, no evidence at all. Mr. Grosskreutz was a trained EMT officer there to offer medical aid. Rittenhouse's first victim wasn't a protester. He was a man who'd just been released from a psychiatric hospital who seemed to be having a mental health crisis. And so when the judge allows these victims to be described as criminals, that certainly calls into question his judgment, if not his bias.
Yeah, he definitely added a lot more to there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up some of the stuff I've got. It's in writing, so it's transcripts or written reporting, and I'm going to read them. And I'm also going to add a couple things that was on local TV, and you can either believe it or you're not. But I think I have made the case, because I basically told that guy that there was plenty of legal experts, and I found at least two of them. And I just don't want to make an hour video. I'm going to try and get this done quick. But I'm going to kind of go over a couple of the facts, and I'll try to distinguish between the stuff that I think is a fact and the stuff where, it's my opinion or it's stuff I'm telling you from memory. So just give me a second to get all that queued up here. Okay, the first thing I want to point out, this is actionnetwork.org, and they have a petition to tell the Wisconsin Judicial Commission to investigate the Rittenhouse trial judge Bruce Schroeder for his misconduct. And I think they got a legitimate point here, because if you are a victim, like the three people he shot, and you've got two people that were dead, their families, and the guy that testified that got shot, when you are a victim, I think it's fair to expect that, there is going to be a fair chance for the prosecutor to actually find your assailant or your murderer guilty and lock him up. And that just did not appear to be the case with this judge. This one here, and I'm trying to, let me see who this is. This is MSNBC News by Eric Ortiz. During the almost 2 weeks of the trial, he has lashed out in anger, lectured the jury by citing Roman history and the Bible. That right there is a red flag. And has been a divisive figure to those watching the proceedings. On Friday, while hearing arguments about what to include in jury instructions, he quipped about getting text messages from my few remaining friends as part of the larger point about touchscreen technology and electronic. I'm not so sure I think it might be fair to say that this judge might have been suffering from dementia. I think that might be fair. He also grew prickly about a debate over photos, saying, "You're asking me to give instructions. I want to see the best picture." Again, and I can't find anything on this, but watching the local news, there was a point in the trial where he was yelling at the prosecutor for something, and he basically stated that he ruled on a prosecute because he was being accused of being unfair, and he was bringing up the fact that he ruled in favor of one of the prosecutor's motions, I think, and the defense lawyer goes, "No, you ruled against one of mine." And so he didn't seem to be too aware, and there were times where I think he was reading a magazine while the trial was going on. I think that was the case. He was looking through a magazine while the trial was going on. It just didn't wasn't good. And then Howard Dean weighed in, and I kind of agreed with what Howard Dean was saying, but I don't know that he's a lawyer or a prosecutor or a judge. But Stephen Wright, a clinical law professor at the University of Wisconsin, disagreed with Dean's characterization, but said that judges have a responsibility to be neutral so that people have a sense that the trial is being conducted impartially and fairly under the law. And the fact that he had to say that, I think, speaks volumes. He's a law professor in Wisconsin, my home state, and I don't know what to say. I think that says that, he wasn't. He clearly wasn't. Let me get the next one. Okay, this one here is Vanity Fair. And I gotta be fair, Ellie Misto, I might have the wrong guy, but I think if it's the guy I think he is, he's got kind of a white fro. I might have the wrong person, but if it's the guy I think it is, I see him on MSNBC, and I actually like the guy I think, but I've seen him on MSNBC talking about another case, and in that case, I had to kind of comment on YouTube where the clip was that I don't think he would have been allowed to have been a jury member in that, because I don't think he was being in. It was in I think it was in one of the cop shooting cases. But like in this one here, I can absolutely see that the argument that using the term in a case where the defendant claims self-defense lacks neutrality. It's a choice other judges have made, though. I doubt that this kind of neutrality would have been given to a black teen who gunned down people at a MAGA rally. I think he's right. That's one thing I think you should do is you should look at Kyle Rittenhouse. You should look at the stuff he did where he said, "Oh, I bought the gun because it was cool." He drove out of state. He went out in public and just started shooting people. Just imagine he was black. Just imagine he was Mexican. Imagine if he was, transgender. I don't think these people that are defending Rittenhouse would feel the same way. I really don't. And there might be some people on the left that would feel like these guys do about Rittenhouse if it was, but the majority of the people on the left and in the center, they would probably feel the same, whoever did it. They would think, yeah, this was wrong. You shouldn't have gone out and shot those people. Still, I wouldn't call Judge Schroeder biased for this ruling alone. I call Schroeder biased because at the same conference at which he decided to prohibit the prosecution from the word victims to describe the people, he said he would allow defense to use word. Yeah, so this was brought up before, and then in response, he goes, "That's bullshit. The victims are not on trial. Rittenhouse is refusing to allow prosecutors to use linguistically accurate terms for people who did not voluntarily attempt to catch a bullet with their face at the same time as allowing the defense to use prejudicial language to characterize what those people were doing at the time is the very definition of bias. There is not and never will be a trial to determine whether Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum were arsonists." And one of those guys, they said in the other clip, was a mental health person who was out legally, I believe, who had a mental health episode. But there won't be a trial to determine if they were arsonists, looters, or rioters because Rittenhouse killed them in the street. Indeed, the sole surviving victim of Rittenhouse's gunfire, Gage Grossman, has not been charged with rioting, looting, and arson or any crime whatsoever arising out of the protest. And like we saw in the other video, they mentioned that he was like an EMT. Oh, hang on, I gotta up the. Just one sec. I gotta move it. At the same time, Schroeder. Hang Elsewhere in pretrial fund, Schrodinger let Rittenhouse out on a $2 million bail, which was crowdfunded by people who think he did nothing wrong. Refused to issue a new arrest warrant for Rittenhouse after prosecutors argued he had violated the terms of his bond, and said that he would allow the defense to introduce evidence of police officers telling the 17-year-old, "We appreciate you," and "oh, there was also this." At the same time, Schrodinger announced that he would not allow prosecutors to introduce evidence of Rittenhouse's prior disposition to shoot people to death. That usually goes on. That's something they do in almost, and when it's a Muslim or a black person. I'm trying to think of the most recent case, the one shooting down in Texas. Uh, they brought in, that they were talking about that on the news about the social media stuff that these guys, and that is usually brought in these other cases. Uh, there is a video of Rittenhouse watching from a car as people leave a CVS. He calls them looters and says that he wishes he had a gun to shoot them. This video was taken in August 2020, about 2.5 weeks before Rittenhouse shot up the streets of Kenosha. There are also photos from January 2020 of Rittenhouse posing with members of the Proud Boys. Both the video and the photo will be excluded, but the police patting Rittenhouse on the head like a good little white supremacist will be included. And again, he gets maybe a little over the top, but I think that's fair in this case. And all that happened before the trial got underway. Since it has, Schrodinger has seemed inclined to continue to go to bat for a kid who killed 2 people. On Wednesday, for instance, he snapped at the prosecution for asking Rittenhouse why he thought he needed protection in the form of an AR-15, which seems pretty central to the case. I'm trying to think. There was, I think there was one other thing, and I just can't. But again, I think this is over the top. I mean, if you wanna believe a white supremacist did nothing wrong when he went out and shot people, I don't think there's any evidence that's going to convince you. But I think for any rational person out there, I think this just proves the case. I think this gets it done. Okay, if anybody is stuck with it, I think this is important. I'm doing my best to get it out there. I'm going to wrap this up. There's a few things I'm missing. Schrodinger has admonished prosecutors throughout the trial, telling Assistant District Attorney Thomas Binger on Wednesday, "Don't get brazen with me," after Binger mentioned Rittenhouse's right to remain. And the judge was actually right on that, let's be honest. Schrodinger's cell phone briefly rang on Wednesday with a ringtone of Lee Greenwood's "God Rest My." I don't, honest to God, I just can't throw that up there. But there is one thing where it was one of the defense witnesses. The judge made everybody like thank him or stand up for his military service. That seems completely, I'm sorry, thank you for your service, but that should have nothing to do in a courtroom. It really should. The judge has not allowed prosecutors to describe, this has been talked about. Wednesday, Schrodinger questioned whether prosecutors might be distorting evidence by showing a video on an iPad while pinching to zoom in, after the defense baselessly claimed that the pinch to zoom feature could prompt artificial intelligence programming to distort the original video. I'm sorry, that judge is a moron. He's old, so it's understandable, but he's a moron. Schrodinger called for a break in the trial Wednesday after Rittenhouse broke down on the witness stand, which many left-leaning activists and public figures dismissed as fake emotion. I was watching that on local news. That was some fake ass shit. I'm sorry. It really was. That's my opinion, but I'm sorry. That was fake. And this is Forbes. Forbes wrote this one. And I don't know. I don't know how to say it. At this point, I honestly think if you can't understand that, yeah, he was guilty, you're probably just beyond help. But for anybody out there that you can maybe help, I just kind of wanted to do it. Okay, now, if anybody has made it this far, please leave your comments down below. And if you did make it this far, make sure you make some comment in that. If there's even one person says they made it this far, I'll be a happy camper. But yeah, just leave them down there. Thank you for helping me. There's 2 goals that you guys have helped me get, and I really don't believe it. I don't think I deserve it. I do appreciate it. Thank you. Like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to go in there and comment hashtag Dark Brandon Rises, I think it is. Put those in there. If I get enough of them, I will go ahead and make a new goal, and I'll make a new screen. Peace out, and I hope everybody has a great day.